Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. We are here with the one and only Ranga. How's it going, my friend? What are you up to?
It's going really well. As the day goes by, I become more curious about
Mm.
what this is about, where I come from, or is there coming from or coming out of. When you look into the science aspects of things, that you're made up of all the elements that's present in different combinations in other organisms, living or not. So it's like you're not coming from somewhere, you're already there, you're just becoming aware of it because of the senses that you've got now, right?
Yeah, let's try to unpack that a little bit. You think that is the purpose of trying to be present is because you're always trying to be aware? Like so many people get caught in where they want to be or where they were just at, even if that's just in your mind space. Like sometimes you're not even present.
Yeah, one of the best things about this is the presence is purely subjective, right? And
Mhm.
the only person who can explain that is the person who is within that, right? Like, for me, I cannot think about what is presence for them, or like, are they present or not. You can't just imagine by looking at people, or it's more of a subjective experience, that it's a state that you're going to be in. And with respect to that, I think we drifted from what consciousness and exploration, and how
Mm.
presence comes into this, right? So I believe that consciousness is, it's a again, it's a subjective term. Like,
Right.
we all have different definitions about it, and there is a whole medical aspect of consciousness, where they define six states, right? Vegetable life,
Right.
half awake mode, and so but there is this aspect of discussion of consciousness on the psychedelic side, or even meditation side, I would say. I think there is a huge overlay between to the states of consciousness that helps us reach there. But it's more so an awareness, right? I think consciousness becomes awareness at some point, based on the senses it has, I feel like. So this discussion my partner and I were having, that because this day that I got really high, right?
Yeah.
After this bong shot, it hits me, and it puts me exactly into the space of, I would say, I've seen cannabis act as a psychedelic so many times, but so much more control of your conscious thoughts, so you can literally make a bad trip or a good trip out of it. Same true with psychedelics, but it's more, I think with cannabis, you can use it as a great tool to reach altered state of consciousness, right? So when I'm there, I have this question, like, as I'm looking at Ollie, my dog, right? I'm looking at him, and there is a question, like, what am I looking at, right?
Mm.
Like, so this dog is there, but do we understand, in terms of, with people, we are much more judgmental than when it comes to dog, I believe. At least for me, the journey was in such a way that with dogs, I wasn't able to say, oh, this dog is better than this dog, I like this dog more than the other dog. There was just this unconditional love they were all emitting. And there was no, so for me, the question came, what do I am seeing in them, which is common along all dogs, right? It's not size or shape, those are appearances, right? It's not even the personalities. Like, I have two dogs, one of them is really active, the other one is lazy, completely opposite. He'll take the shortest route to getting things done, right? And but I'm looking at something that is common between these two uh, different, what do you say, different personalities, identities, or mental structure, right? So what is it I'm looking at? And it just, there is a realization that, oh, it's the part that's within me, that awareness part that I'm looking at. And then the question comes, so what is becoming awareness? So is it only a conscious, the living being is the only thing that has awareness, or awareness is just an illusion of perception for us, which is actually consciousness, another way of, it's just consciousness exploring itself, right? And
Mm.
so if I try to stop seeing the boundary of my dog, and then just see that consciousness is throughout there, in the whole field that I'm viewing, right? But the dog has a particular senses that displays these consciousness in such ways, right? I think I sent you that picture.
Yeah.
We are not, we don't see what is there, we see what we are,
Right.
right? And I think it's the part where we have senses where you and I cannot say infrared rays or ultraviolet rays, we see a particular range of frequency, and we have termed it visible light because humans are the only one using language, as we know. So we said visible light, but visible for who? It's not
Yeah.
visible light for the entire species beings, right? There are so many beings out there that have different senses. And so for me, when I start seeing things as consciousness, I see things as more of an energy play. So this reality out there is perceived by another being in a totally different way. It would be
Yeah.
differently, the colors would be different, it would have a different dimensional aspect to it, right? Here, so when I see it as energy, I see it being constructed in within my head, right? The reality happening within, because same thing happens with psychedelics, right? One of the reasons people are initially, I think, afraid or do not integrate what they see in psychedelics is because, like, oh, it's a drug, it's hallucination, it's happening inside. But my question is, the whole reality, what if it's happening inside, right? And for me, I do believe it's true. We just create everything here based on the lenses we got. And those, there are so much physical aspect to it that, for example, eyes, as I said, visible range, audible range, they are limited such, and we are able to understand it. But based on mental bias that we have, stereotypes are just things that would have helped us in the past, and right now it's just a unnecessary crutch, I would say, acting as a hindrance, right? So your question was, what am I up to in my everyday life? I'm able to be more aware of these things, the things that are stopping me to be at a place of joy, right? And it's a never ending thing. I think I was talking with this person who's writing a book about psychedelics and how it has helped people. So I had this opportunity that he asked me if I could, you know tell something about my story, and we were
Yeah.
talking about it, right? And it's quite interesting.
Yeah. It's fascinating. So let me just go back a little bit. When you're on the topic of dogs, what is dog spelled backwards?
Yeah,
You
every
know what
single
I
time, right?
mean? But taking it full circle, I love this idea of awareness and consciousness. And I want to touch on what you said about everything happening inside here. I've had some really big psychedelic trips where I've found something similar, but only like I've had these machinations or these ideas in situations where I could see things different. But for the first time in my life a few years ago, I actually came out different. And I don't know if that's because I've had so many journeys that all of a sudden I acted on it or it's just something flipped. But there's the reality that you see here is your awareness right now probably has something to do with the default mode network in your brain, the way it's wired, how you're seeing it. And Ranga's default mode network, Ranga's perception, Ranga's awareness is different than George's awareness. But sometimes under a psychedelic dose, George's awareness can become a whole different George's awareness. And I think the magic happens when you can shift between those two awarenesses, like putting on a pair of 3D glasses, like, okay, now I can see both awarenesses. Like that is a really fundamental shift in using psychedelics as a tool. And I like what you said. I think that might be the integration of consciousness and awareness. That might be conscious awareness, like, and for me, it was like my whole life I had been all these labels that people had put on top of me. I had been all these ideas that had been taught to me at school. I had a short, kind of blinders on of all the options I could be. Maybe that's my fault, or maybe that's society's fault, or a combination of two. But later in my life, after some psychedelic experiences, I remember laying down and just having this trip and physically seeing a vision of myself as somebody else. And it was after I integrated that trip, I was like, why can't I be that guy? I could totally be that guy. Like, I just was that guy. And in my trip, I believed, not only did I believe, but I was this other person that was still me, but I had all these other things I was doing. And it's like a fundamental shift in the way I thought about myself, but that doesn't quite thoroughly explain how powerful it was. Like, I was a different person. And when I came out of it, I was like, oh, I could just take a left right here and be aware of this other part of me that's always existed. In fact, and the more that I thought about it, like when you talk about awareness, I believe there was other people that already saw me that way. Only I didn't see me that way. So, I really like how you spoke about sitting there using cannabis or psychedelics as a tool to understand awareness, because it is awareness. And I I am not 100% sure where those, if it's like a magnet and one side is awareness and one side is consciousness, like a north and a south pole. So they're the same thing, and it kind of goes in like that infinity sign,
Yeah.
or if it's like a fuzzy boundary. I'm not exactly sure how it connects, but it does seem like they're opposite ends of a pole to me, like a spectrum, and you can move between them if you can take the time and the have the patience and maybe some tools to do it. What made you, like, what do you think that this is something that's been brewing in your head for a while, or what made you start really trying to focus on this idea of consciousness and awareness?
I think the answer to that is comes from the part you just explained about your trips, right? Um, so you were having this. I would expect high amounts where you
Totally.
right dissolved this bit of ideas that you had about yourself, right, and you shift into something. But I feel like that also happens on the manifest form, right? Like you still have a core structure to your identity. There are different trips I think I've had
Yeah.
where there is about restricting, looking forward in the possibilities in this particular body, this lifetime, this subjective
Yeah.
perception, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes based on the doses I've had, particularly in LSD, right? It has broken through. That's one of the reasons I feel like LSD is not appreciated enough. The talks more about psilocybin is like, I think we were having this discussion where with this book author, right? And I was saying psilocybin is seen as the holy grail, and LSD, even in therapy settings, right? So LSD is getting into studies
Yeah.
more right now, but psilocybin and MDMA have been like pretty forefront. They're kind of, MDMA is going to be legalized in 2 years.
Yeah.
So, but I was just mentioning there about what LSD did in the higher dose was take a second to break all the thoughts and take me into a space of unmanifest. So what? So you, in your manifest form, you're making different choices, right? It's all about choices, cause and effect, and you're basically choosing. It's like, you're kind of sitting in a simulation and you choose. Like for example, oh, I'm gonna put the headphones on. I'm gonna take the water bottle. You're playing a thinking game, and body is
Yeah.
automatically doing it. You're not doing it. That's the point. We have this sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So again, the question comes, where do we draw the line, right? How much is automatic and how much we are actually, yeah, I am doing
Mhm.
it, right? um, but to answer your question, it goes to your part where in if you stop seeing life as just choices, and if you see the form that exists behind everything that is common, or take step back and who is the person that's making the choices, right? I think for me that question, even Kevin was saying on the other day in the group thing, right? And just keep asking the question, who am I,
Mm.
right? My everyday practice into this has become stronger in the last 2 3 years, and the reason is because having seen that common thing that exists in different trip, that state of mind that is not pinned on material desires, peoples, or events, or validation, or these things, and it's in a place of joy, right? Very non-judgmental aspect within ourselves. Very, I think that's the common thing they use in all religion. The idea of love, I think it's a very loving state to be in, right? It was very awakening for me to find that Love is not something that is given or done with one person. It's a state to be in. So you can pretty much love everything. It can be in a state of love. So I think most of it comes from how much I had suffered previously in my past identity, right? The more prisoning is it, the more stronger you get, I feel like. When you have to make that jump or shift, it's much easier. It's like, oh, why wouldn't I do something to make myself live? Like, I'm not living right now, I'm existing, I'm surviving.
Mm.
There is no self-awareness. We tend to assume humans have self-awareness. We don't. We have to awaken that part, I feel like. And psychedelics is that part that's like the baptism for the entire world, right? The rebirth. It's
Yeah.
we symbolize and we ritualize everything, and it's there in every religion. The baptism part in Christianity, to the white thread in the Brahmin part, it's related to rebirth. And they start teaching you slogas and mantras, and but it's more of a ritual now. But the original intent was to practice it and get into a state of awareness where you you don't have any glasses lenses you're seeing through. So I think that that's the part, that the whole thing of being in a state of joy, if it's a possibility in real life, if there is a way to pursue it, why not? Like, it's, and it blows open the concept of purpose in life, right? For me,
Mm.
psychedelics did it, broke out everything. So you can literally do anything, and it's a respect to consciousness, because it's the entire thing that's happening here, the manifest form, sun, moon, stars, planets, all the beings in it, everything is a form of consciousness exploring, right? And there is no I think there is this dialogue in Westworld which I really love, right? That show is about robots awakening to their self, right? And it's quite interesting. And this guy says, yep, humans tend to navigate on a very narrow consciousness. They don't explore much more. Much of the human consciousness is termed as insanity, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So but that's the part. It psychedelics takes it away for you, and even for a second, for I think that's where the struggle comes. If you had a life of comfort, you're not going to question your life of comfort. You choose to have the story where LSD is just a psychedelic hallucinogen, which is not reality. You can have fun time in it, but you have to come back to reality, right? it that's the idea you carry. But if your life is not as comfortable, you would want to change, but you just don't know how. I think psychedelics are there to, like, literally guide. And as they say, I think you're your only guru.
Hmm.
And that is so true for everyone, just because of the fact that uh, a person is present or not cannot be measured outside of him.
That's a person cannot be measured outside of them. I mean, can you? I'm trying to think how it's difficult to measure who you are. If we all are this giant consciousness, the idea of measuring seems out of place. You know what I mean? Like, if we're all part of this whole, I let me shift gears for a minute. Like, I agree that psychedelics are a way to awaken yourself to awareness. And I agree that the environment around us is, in fact, a way for us to identify what's happening in our life. I think that the things that we see, if you look at like a butterfly or a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, there's a sign of rebirth. When we look at the major religions, there are tons of prophets who see a rebirth or a sacrifice, or the someone dying and then coming back. And if I can tie it into Westworld, so we take those examples. We have rebirths all around us. We have nature changing forms. And I think that the reality we live in is a way for us to see ourselves changing. And when I look at Westworld, when I look at all this chit chat and all this talk about the singularity and robots taking over, I think that that's just the world reflecting back on us. Like, the majority of humans are the robots. And when you talk about hey, the robots are about to awaken, that means that humans are about to awaken. There's this idea, like you see it all over, like on the Google engineers, the Singularity, Ray Kurzweil, they're talking about, hey man, we're gonna have these robots that awake. What the world is really telling us is that the majority of humans are about to awake, but that's the only way the environment can reflect that to us, because we can't look at each other and see us as robots, but we can see ourselves, and we can even help plan a better path forward if we just pretend that it's the robots that's going to awake. Because what we're really doing is awakening ourselves. And you can see it. You can see some people like yourself having these ideas about awareness and consciousness. I think that the Renaissance in psychedelics is the catalyst that is causing people to change. And if I may have said this before, but I look at this reemergence of psychedelics the same way I look at my psychedelic trips, like especially mushrooms, which comes in waves. In the 60s, there was this first cracking open of the chrysalis, and then it kind of withdrew. And then here it comes again. And now this time we've cracked it a little bit harder, and all of a sudden our wings beginning to emerge. I think that humankind, I think that human awareness is beginning to emerge for the first time in a long time. I think that is the rebirth of awareness. This idea the world we live in is no longer enough to hold us. Like, that's why you see all the institutions breaking down. They're cracking like a chrysalis. And all the parts that are the very most corrupted, be it monetary, government, education, these are the most corrupted parts of our shelter, of our chrysalis, of this thing that's holding us in. And they're breaking down the same way that the weak spots of a cocoon would break down. We're emerging there. And it's scary, but yeah. And that also would show, hey, now we're becoming aware in these parts. Like, we're looking around for the first time. Like, hey, this whole education thing's wrong, man. Hey, this money thing is wrong. Hey, this work thing is wrong. And it's so confusing to us, because it's like we are emerging as a new form and beginning to do that. But I got all that from you talking about consciousness and awareness. And I think that there's a lot that can be done by just sitting and thinking about those two aspects right there, man. And if you can, like, maybe dig a little deeper into, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. Like, that was kind of my definition, as we see the world as we are. But how else could you add to that?
You're extremely. I agree with you on the part that you said we tend to project ourselves through the narration of robots, right? Robots awakening is, and one of the lines that has really impressed, inspired, and stayed along with me is that once you know how to listen, everyone is the guru, right?
Oh, that is. I'm gonna write that down. I've never heard it before.
Yeah, I think it's Ramdas quote, and it's quite interesting, and it's true, because what Ramdas says through the experience of psychedelics, or same with Timothy Leary, and what Sigmund Freud was saying and Carl Jung was saying, are on all similar track, that you are always projecting your own thing. You're able to, even Eckhart Tolle has this quote which says, if you're able to find this characteristic in the opposite person, you have that within you. That's the only reason you're able to identify it, right? So having that, none of this, it's the mind that there is no good or bad, right? That's one important thing that needs to be rewired in our whole human society, because there are so bipolar ideas about, extremist ideas about activities, right? Like situations, things, for example, cannabis being in schedule 1 along with heroin, right? Like, it blows your mind. But I'm sorry. It's funny, because there are so many other things that are actually dangerous. So that's not the reason. But I'm drifting away. With respect to your thing, we tend to project ourselves on other people, and if you're able to notice that part every single time, so I'm not making a judgment of his activity, I'm making a judgment of my own judgment. right?
Hmm.
That is all looking within. The looking within is not just closing your eyes and drifting apart. It has a proper work going along with it, either intellectually or experientially through meditation, right? And yeah, intellectually I feel like it will always fail at some point, because the ego is a strong part of the intellectual self. So it's like this, it's something that you say almost in every episode, and I really love it. Like, if you use the same tools as the people who are oppressing, same money, same power, same chair, it's going to spoil you as well, because the
Yeah.
people are not bad. The places position as their own role to play, right? once a person gets Once a person might be really nice and connecting with everyone saying hi, but he gets popular enough, right? And he's too busy to reply to everyone. Of course he's going to be seen as a person who is very rude on the outside world, but it's not him. Anyone there is going to have the same problem, right? And I think that's the part we need to understand or see, right? Like, okay, this is what I'm gonna look at intellectually each time I experience. I listen to myself, what emotions I have during this. I think, as I said, we need to experiment with ways. We need to be aware of our defense mechanisms, right? It's very subtle. There is always a battle. Like, you try to do that, your response might be the response of a defense mechanism, or your genuine response to break these defense mechanisms. So you don't know until you try this, right? And I think the last time I mentioned that book that I was telling the story is because the integration is just one big thing. For me, it's rest of life is just integration after a trip, psychedelics. So each time you take, it's like go crossing that line and going across and coming around, right? It's going around this. Let's say, as the conversation goes along, this golden thread or something, in your life is going to be on a path where you're not heading straight, you're following a particular spiral route to get somewhere, right? And yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's wise, and it's difficult to understand that at a young age. But I think the older you get, the more familiar you get with the obstacles that come your way. And once you begin seeing that pattern of like, oh, hey, here's this thing I keep running into. Oh, here it is again. Oh, here it is again. Like, life's going to throw that same thing at you until you figure out how to get around that obstacle. And you could begin seeing your life that way. And, it's maybe that's definitely one thing I think I was here to learn, is that the pathway is ever upward, to be defeated by ever bigger and bigger obstacles. And these things that you thought in your life, and the things that really bother you in other people are the things that really bother you about yourself. And I really like the idea about everyone becomes the guru. Like, and I'm thankful in my life. In the last few years, I, like everybody, have struggled my life with allowing other people's actions to really bother me. And, in the last few years, I've come to this conclusion, like, oh, it's such a gift, because even if I try to talk to this person and they slight me or they treat me bad, instead of seeing it as them a reaction to you, or instead of me, I try no longer to see that as a slight towards me or a reaction to me, but more of a sign of what I should not do to other people. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I see this happening. God, I don't really like that. And before I was there, I would get stuck and I would go around in the circle, be like, well, why did they do that? I bet you they did it because of this. And you know what? When I see them, I'm going to do that. And like, it's just this, you get trapped in this circular reasoning that takes you nowhere. But if you begin to see it as a signal of how to live your life, if you begin to see the words of others as the guru that everyone is, oh, this person is teaching me maybe something that I need to work on. Maybe I do that, and so I should work on that. In fact, how could I even see it in them if I didn't do it? So I'm going to try to make a note to not to do that to people. And when you do that, the second you do that and you catch yourself doing it, it's like it clicks and you're like, oh, that's perfect. And so it takes away the rage, it takes away the anger, it takes away the frustration, and it makes life much more available. It makes much more life much easier to live in the now. Like those are those things that take you away from the now. It's like as soon as you get caught up in something, you're no longer present because you're thinking about what you did. You're thinking about how to react. You're thinking about why that person reacted. All the things in life, and then you're gone. But then once it snaps back into motion, okay, it's like the weight's off your shoulders and you're back present again. I think that the more that I think about it, the more I think it is like a magnet. It's like a push and a pull, and the trick is to stay somewhere in that, like, if you take two magnets and you hold together, there's that force in there. Like if you take a north and a south pole, like I think that the goal of life is to live within that push and pull right there. And if you get, if you put them too close together, they smooth out of the way or they snap together, or they flip around. Like the trick is to live in between the pressure of those two magnets. Like whatever that force is, that's the balance in there, we should build a model of that somehow. I think you could put like a metal ball and have two magnets and have that ball stay, like a ball bearing, stay in there. And that would be like a reminder to stay in the present.
I love it. It's gonna, once George's cult forms, right? I think that will be the symbol of that religion. Right?
Yes.
So I think that's the best part, when this is another one of those moments, right? We're talking about this and it develops into a form of symbol. How harmless and nice it is, right? It's a reminder. The same thing 150 years later, there are going to be protests about it shouldn't be there and why it's being misused or taking humans away than bringing them together, right?
Yeah.
Because that's our tendency. We tend to do that, right? You said about getting lost in something, in thought, and then being present.
Yeah.
If at all I'm caught in this thinking, my question comes to the part is always this: how am I coming here? Who is making the decision to come here? I am lost. I'm not there. So how am I coming to the present moment, right? And it seems so like, I get this joy of this physical form falling through something, and there is no ground, as they say in Zen, right? Like, yes, your bad news is you're falling, good news is no ground, right? That news is the best. And keep falling, and you're in a consistent you have the idea of what falling would do to you, right? So it's more of a mental state, I feel like we can be. And the question is, you're always gonna sleep. The whole journey again, right, of awakening is one. Everything goes in loops, right? It's a thing that drifting between awareness, awaking, self-awareness, and sleeping. Just doing life based on the fear of death, I would say, right? Because there is no awareness, there is ignorance in the self. That here, ignorance is not that. I don't know. I've had a negative context of ignorance growing up, but it's not a bad thing. Ignorance is just that you just don't know.
You don't know.
You don't know. That's all. You just don't know, and that's fine, right? What's happening, though, on a mass front, as you said, so much destruction has to happen. Each destruction is just a disguise for new beginnings, right?
Yeah. I
So
like that.
that one whole being right now, if you see, it's like this, a person, this, if you see one whole being as humanity as one being, right, and humans as cells, there are a lot of ignorant cells, but that's giving rise to a form that exists on a higher plane, right? A being, a collective being. And now the cells that are getting awakened, self-conscious, are like cancer cells to the body, right? It's going to fight. There is always going to be a fight. Yes, if the cancer cell grow in number, that being is going to be dead. But we know energy is neither created nor destroyed, so it's just going to change form, right? So it's going to become another being, and there is no physical death of anything. It's more of a higher dimensional act. And all these things, right, it comes from individual level of looking at changes, right? In Vipassana meditation, the one most frequent word Goenka uses is anicca. Anicca is a word for in Pali language for impermanence, right? Nothing
Mhm.
is permanent, and meditation is about this aspect where you go within yourself and you're aware of all things happening in your body, and you start seeing changes in a way where when you go from gross realities like perceiving externally to perceiving gross sensation in your body such as heavy pains and aches and stuff to subtler sensations, for example like goosebumps. If you
Yeah.
notice goosebumps at a deeper level, it's magical.
Yeah.
It's just there is this electric current flowing. So can we tune into those sensations, right? And as we start tuning into the sensations that are becoming more smaller, right, microscopic, they go proportional to the time, activity time, right? The bigger you are, I feel like, not bigger size wise, but the more collective, more cells you are, I think the time increases. But at the cellular level, the time is much more. That's why each second there is so much death happening in our body, so much rebirth, right?
Right.
Would we be able to focus that through meditation? Because that's what I think meditation is working towards. The smaller you go, take your attention throughout your body, right? If you're gross and just thinking about this hand, you're able to feel the sand, but at this point the sand is kind of out of the picture. You're not
Right.
focusing on it. I'm just touching a table, it's not a big deal, right? But the more smaller sensations you start, subtler sensations you start observing, your awareness is spread throughout the body,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
If you go even less than that to a part where which is present throughout the universe, right? Let's say a quark, right, that is acting against the resistance of, let's say, god motion, right? Making its first primary decision of whether I'm going to be a wave or a particle, or let me just zeros and ones,
Right.
and if you take the attention to that, would your attention be throughout the universe? That's the question. And I think that's where meditation gets you.
Hmm.
You would be able to have the wisdom of whatever has happened. So at that point I feel like the stories about past life or I had this life, that life, those seem so insignificant because you're getting smaller, and it's based on, I think each meditation has this level in Hindu thing, right? I think Kevin was asking, or you were asking, right? And those levels are pretty much like where the subtler ego comes. Sometimes when we are born, we are too much directed by physical characteristics and stuff, uh, right? And then you go to, oh, it's not physical characteristics, maybe mental characteristics, and you start changing your ideas, concepts, try to work it mentally. And you go one more step and you see you're not just limited to physical or mental features, but there is something common in, let's say, humans
Yeah.
collectively, right? And then that goes from, maybe if something is common between humans and me, is there something common between humans and animals, right? Oh yeah, there is a lot common. And then slowly it goes to a part where, like, is there anything common between living and non-living beings? Is there anything common between space and objects in it? Without space, objects cannot exist. And if only space exists and there is no object, space would not exist. Something needs to be there to relatively define it, right? So as I'm questioning, right, I'm just rambling about this thought process that goes in my head, where it almost always comes to this part of, ah, yes, we get trapped in duality, right? And when you meditate and practice, I think that increases your potential to come back to the moment sooner, right? As you said, not being lost in obsessive thoughts, coming back to present.
Yeah. That is deep, Ranga. That's deep, my friend. Like, I maybe it's not being lost as it is existing in a different form in a different body. Like maybe when you get lost, okay, not on every day being lost or whatever, but in deep meditation, like you said, if I can feel my heartbeat in my fingertip and then be there, or I can feel the heartbeat in my toes, you know, maybe these times in deep meditation, like deep empathy could be you or part of you existing in somebody else. It can be you exist, like maybe when you're looking at your dog, that's what you recognize is your existence in the dog or your existence in your partner. And I don't think that when you explained it like you did, and when I think about that which exists in me exists in everything else, like I think you can get to deep spots where, and I think that might be the ultimate realization, is that we are one organism. And the same way you can meditate and feel your heart beating your finger in a deep psychedelic groove or in a deep transcendental meditation, the same way you can feel your heartbeat in your finger, you can feel the heartache in your partner. You can feel the heartache in someone in your family halfway across the world, because you're attached to them, because you're part of them, because we're all one organism, right?
I'm sorry, I have a different point to that, so
Yeah.
that's why I'm stopping you
Yeah,
here.
please.
What if you do not get to the part of, you go deeper for sure with psychedelics, so what if, in our sober mind we are not there yet, that we don't know what it actually looks like, right? State specific memory, we have a glimpse of it, we do not actually recall everything as it is, right? Because I've always felt, I had this idea for the last 2 years where, oh, it's gonna make me guilty that I am able to, like, empathize something, and you find out you're the reason, so you start changing things. But when your awareness actually gets to that level, right, and i I don't think you're worried about the characteristics and personality, and you start seeing the root of the thing. What you mentioned, you said you're attached to them, the attachment is there, so it is as much affecting the play, the interplay, right? It's not just people, it's what we think of them, how we want to hold them, right? So what if we see at this part, right? Because if everyone were able to focus on their attachment with the worldly items, or even ideas, concepts, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be the complete manifest thing. If they were able to visualize it, right, and if they can overcome that, it would be, I'm sorry, I'm having a brain freeze here.
No, it's okay. So if they are not focused on their attachment to people, if they
Yes, if everyone is able to focus on their own attachments, right?
okay,
Because our actions out of fear comes purely due to attachments in
right.
relationships, in interplays. So if everyone is working on themselves, again I have to say something that Ramdas says, which hits me so nicely, like, the only gift you can give another people, the only form of respect or love, is to work on yourself, right? And that's the only thing. The ultimate realization is, it doesn't have to be some magnanimous thing, it has to be that you're powerless to take care of anything else. It could be that, not in a bad way, in a freeing way. Like, they say, I didn't train my dog properly, right? So I think my partner was really helpful in training him in the last 1 year. And when we met people, right, trainers, they used to say, if you don't train the dog is gonna think he needs to protect you and the house. I think my partner says this, he needs to protect the house, right? So if you train them to be calm and not be worried that you're being taken care of, you don't need to hunt for food, I'm gonna give you food, you just enjoy play, right? It's good for the dogs, right? I didn't have that kind of understanding back then. I failed miserably in training. Oh no, it was it was a nice miss. But yeah, right now, being able to see the same thing in our lives, right? If we are able to understand that, oh, we don't need to do what we are doing purely out of fear, going after comfort, safety, security. These are ideas we're chasing, consistently chasing. If we can drop that, it's a choice, and it seems a hard one to make, because when we are primarily ego dominant, right, or
Mhm.
ignorant, it feels like the death of the self. Ah, fuck. But only when you die you realize that I'm still here. What died? That's not me, right? So it's mind blowing once you cross it. But to cross that is the most hardest part, I think. It seems very challenging because you're easily slipped into this place of doubt.
Mm.
But I know I interrupted you there to just say that we need to look at our attachments. Like it would be the best case scenario. Everyone work on themselves. There would be so much more harmony.
It is hard. It's hard to let go. Like, I don't like. I would like to let go of my job and not work there anymore. But and then I'm like, what am I gonna do for money? What about my kid? Then there's all these what ifs that come into play, and I've seen it so many times of people that I respect who have made a difficult decision and just kind of got out of their own way. Like I mean, there's a difference between quitting and giving up. Like you can't just give up and do nothing, but you can decide to not do something that is destroying you. I was talking to Cole Butler a little bit ago, and he was telling me this awesome story about how we were talking about there's a new study that came out for LSD and depression. And he was telling his own story about depression, and it got us on this topic of antidepressants. And it seems to me that antidepressants are a way for you to maintain your depression but be happy about it. You know what I mean? Like you still are in the situation you're in. It just is like a shield, or it's a callus. Like you're gonna people that are on antidepressants are depressed because they're not removing themselves from the situation that's depressing. They're just taking a pill and then going and continuing to live that life that makes them upset about what it is they don't want to do. But that pill will release endorphins. That pill will release oxytocin. That pill will release a neurotransmitter that makes it more viable to get through your day. And the difference with like a psychedelic is it awakens you to the fact of like, oh, you know why I'm unhappy? Because I'm doing this thing. Why don't I just stop doing this thing and then I won't be depressed? And so I think that there's something to be said about attachments, letting go, and psychedelics versus the culture that we have now. Like the culture that we have now gives us the medicine to prolong the culture. Like the cultural medicine promotes cultural beliefs. You know what I mean? And like it's this ongoing cycle of we're going to continue to stay in this
Loop.
yes, thank you. Like like if you just think about what's happening right now, like yeah, of course nothing's going to get better. We're doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Like it's not going to change. That's the definition of insanity, right?
Is it? Who is that? Albert Einstein?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah, it's a nice one, right?
It fits with our conversation because I think it's the loop. It's the ongoing cycle of thought that needs to be broken. And it's the same thing that like the Zen master do. He snaps you out of it, right? If he has to smack you with a fish, or if he has to make you sit outside in the rain from whatever it is, he's trying to break that cycle of thought that is causing you to live in the fantasy land.
Yeah. You're. Let's go. I'm gonna go back a second to that
Yeah, please.
antidepressant part.
Yeah.
Whatever I have heard from people, so I don't know personally anyone who has taken antidepressants. So whatever I read online, who have taken antidepressants and then taken psychedelics, right? And they say antidepressant is just numbing. It doesn't. It demotivates you from everything that at least you don't go to the point of killing yourself, right? Like I mean, whatever, man. I'm not interested in life, but I don't want to like I'll just do life, whatever, right?
Right.
So it just puts you on that line there, basically by doing these things. But it's so funny. The whole idea of letting go, which psychedelics tell you, is including to the drug, right? Like now, you see, after a point, I feel like psychedelics don't show you something new. It says pretty much the same thing. For me, at least, it's been the story over 2 years, and it's like, be here now. That's all you can do. That's all there is, and nothing more, right? And it comes there. So after a point, right now, it's more of a yeah, I'm just a drug addict who's fun, having fun with the drugs rather than there is a spiritual aspect with respect to forgetting important parts of sometimes losing it, like trying to be aware of your habit patterns. But mostly I've realized that there is nothing new it's gonna happen with psychedelics, so I got to start doing the work. So there is ability for us to let go of the medicine altogether as well, and that's the work of medicine, fixing the root of the problem, right? uh, right now it's just the weeds keep growing, they keep cutting it, and it's a 10-minute thing. And you put this pill, and it's the loop where you're gonna pay price significantly for the rest of your life. Where if there is a cure, I think we should always be brave enough to go for the cure rather than, you know because there is no one is going to give us a reward if we live till 70 or 80 or 100 or 150. There is nothing. You will be in Guinness book, but you won't be there to see it. So even when you're there to see it, it's not a big deal, right? So you live 10 days or 20 days, how much present you can be, that changes so much in life, right? When you're present for those let's say you only have 10 days to live, you're present for the next 10 days, you don't have to time to think that you're going to die. It was what you were mentioning, right? Like most of the times when we get lost, we are in thoughts that we can't be in present. The opposite is also quite true, right? If you're in the present, there is no way your thoughts can come to you. And how do you do that? And when I feel like once you are very much close to death, the near death experience, it shows you that there is nothing to be scared of, right? And it's very hard to normally talk, because there are either the subconscious as this beautiful defense mechanism that completely suppresses the fear of death,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're able to navigate. And people who are like you, if you don't even know, you're not going to work on it. So that's one of the reasons I'm very passionate about existential psychotherapy, right? Like I think that needs to be added to every model or paradigm that is there in the mental health. Because if you find the root of the problem of mental health, right, leave the physical problems aside, the gene problems, talking about people who are going to therapies now, we are missing a major part by not including death. It's people, this guy Dr. Irvin Yalom has this book called Existential Psychotherapy that got released in 1980. It's a wonderful book which talks about a different research that's working on finding out the effect of death on our understanding of the world and how much can we be. They didn't have terms as consciousness and presence, because even Yalom mentioned it. It was very nice. He said, if I get too much into this consciousness and present moment awareness, the book would go spiritual. But I'm trying to use this book to convince therapists, so I gotta have a scientific lingo. I'm sorry, this is introduction, right? And I was like, yep. And
Yeah. It's so true. It's
yeah,
true.
he mentions that one of the reasons that Freud stopped his research from going further is pretty much a egoic play, because in all non-research activities like public speaking and of footnotes and stuff, he would always say death is the motivation behind the other defense mechanisms that he usually is known for describing, right? So fear of castration, men have fear of castration. That's basically like, wait, if I don't have what I need to further life, that's end of humanity. So that's totally from fear of death. Likewise, if you see different things, it all has stem at that. And if you're able to fix that, it's pretty much like the question of antidepressant versus psychedelics, right? If you're able to go to the root problem, go for it. It's for different people, it is arranged as layers though. Some defense mechanisms have to be fought to get to this. It's like a person who doesn't know English and he has to read an English book, he has to do the work of learning English first, right? So it's that is one layer of defense mechanism before he can actually read the specific book he wanted to read, which is going to be the fear of death, right? And but if I feel like cannabis comes into this very nicely, because it makes me super paranoid sometimes, and
Yeah.
I love it. Oh, I'm like that fear that rushes. It's like, come, it's been a while. Like you. And it's so nice to have that feeling where it comes and like, oh, the fear of death, when it surfaces, how much can I be equanimous to it, right? Like, be equanimous is this word again I learned in the past now, because each thing that you're working at cellular level, when you're meditating, different memories come up, right? It gives you a chance. Right now, what happens when we take time off is basically people are not able to sit with their thoughts, is what distractions are there for, right? Like, we have the cinema theater Cineplex nearby. It's so funny. It says your escape begins. Escape from what? And this is, a theater in Canada with such big sign. Your escape is here. Like, I'm not kidding, right? Like, this is happening, and people want that. So where are we trying to escape from? It's our own thoughts, our own things, right? Because if it comes up, we take it too personally with ourselves. It's like, oh my god, you have touched my privacy. There is no privacy in this world. First of all, with even between people, we just fight for something, another great illusion, right? But within ourselves, we play this privacy game with our own self. Oh, thoughts. Oh, no, 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 you're not. No, we suppress it so much rather than welcome. Say, see what is that you have brought to me today, right? And if that comes, for me, it comes through cannabis, and when it comes, I can be more like, yeah, maybe I'm not gonna react this time. What's gonna happen? I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. Okay, please further all your thought process. Like, you take me on a trip, right? And the moment I give it room, it's like, nah. You're the one who gives me energy to do that. If you say you're okay with it, where do I get the energy, right? And it goes into a state of such serenity, right? It's beautiful. And
Yeah.
I think that sorry, the last part I want to say,
Yeah. Please.
realization of fear of death in a truer sense will put us so much present. That's why all these activities are there, right? Speed racing, mountain climbing, the more closer you're with death, you're observant of everything. And for that person, I am sure 4 years back, if you had asked me, I would have said it's stupid to mountain climb. But now I'm completely opposite. If a person has 10 minutes to live, he's gonna climb, and if he doesn't make it, it's fine. He doesn't make it. He was present. That's all there is. We are not gonna carry on history for the encyclopedia and heaven encyclopedia and hell encyclopedia. No, none of those. So yeah.
That's amazing points. I makes me wonder if maybe our culture taught that more, instead of, hey, have 100-year plan, or have a 50-year plan, or maybe if we didn't celebrate the generational wealth, you know what I mean? Like, then maybe people could live in a world that is more present, and people could have a better life. I think that the idea of paranoia being a way to face your fears, and I like what you said about the paranoia turning into humor sometimes. Like, you're like, oh no, oh, that's not gonna happen, but like, if you suppress that thought enough, like that little there's a saying that says, kill the demon while it's small. So if that paranoia can come to you and you can get scared about it, and then you can laugh about it, you've killed it. But if you keep pushing it away, next thing you know, you're 100 pounds overweight. No one wants to be around you. It's because you haven't dealt with a lot of this trauma that's been knocking on your door, and it's not, now this little thing has turned into a giant. It's doing a great job of scaring you, but it's true. I've found that after hitting psychedelics pretty hard for the last few years, like, sometimes the paranoia, the fear of death, it sneaks up on me. Like, I'll just be outside doing something, and I'll be like, dude, I'm gonna die. But like you, I welcome it. Like, it's scary a little bit. I'm like, well, I'm probably not gonna die today. But in that moment, I'm like, it hits me kind of hard, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. And like, I should try to get this stuff done today, but then it turns into this idea of like, well, it's probably not gonna be today. But that was a nice reminder, and it's like a friend tapping you on the shoulder, like, hey man, you're gonna die, right? Oh yeah, thanks. But I think that that's a healthy relationship, and it allows you to be present. I think Tim Ferriss said, being anxiety is being trapped in the future, and depression is being trapped in the past. And so, but let me ask you this, as someone who is thinking about the psychotherapy being a part of everyone's sort of mental health, like how do you draw the line? Like, say somebody comes in and they need help. Like, how do you walk that line and not program them? Like, if they come in and they talk to you and maybe they have a session with you, like how is it that you're getting them to walk the right path without telling them what their problem is, right? Because if you just tell them that they're afraid of death, they're not really solving it for themselves, you know. So what do you do in that kind of a situation?
One of the reasons that's why I don't think I'm interacting with people on that front yet, uh, because I think still I'm in this phase of exploring what's happening within each day gets, as I said, right, a different layer of clarity adds on, and more awareness comes into minute of the things you do, and there is focus is still, turning from external world to inner. It's happening over a course of, again, as I said, 3 years, I would say, right,
Right.
and it's gonna. I I don't think I ever planned for anything. Stopped it and life just happens. Like, including this, right? Like, it's just me who thinks, like, even if we don't do action, because the world, there is a synchronicity there underneath all these that is taking you. We just have to drop the pretense into knowing what we actually want. We just don't know. I think I go back to this in every episode, like, it's okay, just say we don't know, it's fine, right? What they say by saying that it's okay to not be okay, there is a TV series, right? I think it's okay to not be okay, in the sense, what is not okay? Not normal. What is normal? Normal defined by society, right? So these are all, these don't even come at the emotional level. These are just mental work, that's just happening. Oh, I'm not fitting into this, I need to fit, and there is nothing wrong with that, because as a kid learns this is what he or she needs to do to survive in this world. That's what's gonna happen, right? But what they mean by it's okay to not be okay is just, it's okay to just not know what you want, right? Like, be so open, because life is always happening. If my life is spent just talking to you, and seeing few things, having cannabis, that's my way of consciousness exploring itself, and I'm totally fine with it. Who am I to decide against? Whatever life happens, and it's usually, I think, the drive is for the better, if I have to say from an egoic standpoint, right? Like, the more you let go, you're in the flow of life, right? I love that flow state all these drugs puts you in, right? You're just there. There is some, you're not completely stop thinking, it's there, but it's so in tune with what you're doing, and there is harmony, right? And this internal harmony is again something that cannot be measured outside or cannot be explained. Like, you see how much I'm failing to convey that part of, it's just joy, you're not gonna jump and show people that, oh, I'm happy, I've made it at this one, that one. All these constructs break down. Like, everyone, if you can help someone, help. But again, it's like this, the person has to choose to help themselves first.
Right.
And usually in this western modern world, going to therapy is a sign of trying to help themselves. But again, there is a lot of games going on. You see, most of the therapies fail not because of the patient client relationship, or you know therapist. Sometimes it's just, that realization of coming back to the present. How does it happen, I ask you, right? That's the thing, that's not within our hands. So, you, next time I feel like I or you see ignorance anywhere, it's just waiting to, it's still in its cocoon, it's gonna fly one day, right? Nothing for me to do. And then there are people midway who, I feel like I was one, was very much doubtful, irritated, yet low in self-confidence, not knowing to know where the foot is going to be in the future. I'm still thinking in terms of that, right? That's the same thing. Like, I tell you, I want to, this should be that, right? People should have the option to at least know it's okay to not do anything. You're doing something that's just keeping you happy. Because I really grew up in a household where I thought happiness was a privilege once a month,
Mm.
right? and it's always your 29 days is running based on fear, right? It's horrible way of life for a kid to grow up that way. And it doesn't end in one day, right? Because
Yeah.
in when you're done with all the household stuff, you tend to go to be independent self. There is again roadmap that people have given, and your happiness can be done at 60. That's the retirement age in India, right? When I went to India last time, I met people. I was saying these things, right? I was curious about death. I was still not confident to talk about death because it was taboo in India, right? When I ask that, they'll say, uh, "That's you're too early for it. Like, wait a few years. Do the family life and stuff." Like, what family life? And then they give you this script, right? And no, it's so it can be there. There are so many things. There are, US has Second Amendment as the right to carry gun. If those things are existing, why can't my statement exist that, like, don't do anything, give up in everything? You said you can't sometimes give up. No, say give up. It's fine. That's what your consciousness wants. That's what you want. Whatever you want to do, like financially, you're able to sustain yourself. Take care of it. Yeah, the sacrifice is usually in the part where we have our egoic desires, right? Would we be able to drop that? The moment we actually try to fully drop that, we realize that that's all the problem was. That's all the darkness or shadow work you had to do. Right?
What about though, like, do you think there's a line that gets crossed when other people have to take care of you? Like, what if people just want to give up and they're like, I'm just going to live right here, and then they're like, well, I guess I got to live with my parents, and then I guess I got to borrow some money, and then like at some point in time, like that's what I meant between the difference between giving up and letting go. Like, I think it's good to let go of attachments, but it's imperative. It's in some ways, I think that it's helpful, maybe not imperative, but it's helpful to have something to be translating into, to something to look forward to. And like, I once heard a good way to think about life is to have something to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. And I like I've seen some people that, and myself included, I've been down and out a few times, and the idea of having to be a burden on people you love, that seems like a bridge too far of letting go. What do you think?
That's a really good question, and I'll go back to this again. Existential psychotherapy just focuses on death, right? So
Okay.
there are four facets to it, right? The first is death in itself, the fear of death, the realization of it. Second, freedom and responsibility. Third one is meaninglessness, and fourth
Mm.
one is isolation, right? So what it necessarily means in step by step would be that you have your fear of your realization of death, right? Let's say you're gonna die tomorrow, right? So that gives you the freedom to do pretty much everything. Most of the risky things you're not doing is because, like, I might compromise on a longer life that I might live, right? Like, I
Right.
wouldn't do such a crazy act, but you do know that you're going away tomorrow. You're done, right?
Right.
So would you not have more confidence to do things? And people in their mindset, that also gives them the freedom to do what we call as bad things, right? Like, they could literally murder something. I'm gonna die tomorrow, you also die with me, it's a funny only because I'm gonna die, I'm gonna go into non-existence, you also join, I kill you. But that freedom goes that freedom goes along with the responsibility, right? Like, I'm going to be responsible for my actions. That fear of death realization is going to take you on a trip of, it's again, it has to be it's going to be guided, right? And most of the
Right.
things that I'm saying, again, know that I'm defined as insane in parts of human consciousness, right? So that responsibility is that I'm going to be responsible, right? So this responsibility is not by law or moral or anything. Is it what I want to do in this last few minutes as whatever I am right now? See, that's going to be a heavy near death experience if it's going to be few hours from now. It'll be nice that you have nothing to do but contemplate on death, and with that all these aspects, so you still have energy. You're gonna, do I do good or bad, or do I do so? This second step is freedom and responsibility. Third is, there is no meaning to this, meaninglessness. There comes a realization that if there is death for individual cells, and if there is death for group of cells, and if that there is death for bigger entity of cells, everything has death. There is nothing that's going to be left. Will be a point in time in the future where all things that have happened, including this, everything will be not existing. You know what I mean, right? So it's fine, we're not doing it for that. That's the best of it, right? Meaninglessness in a way, again, which is liberating, rather than, in a way, when you say there is no meaning, it's like when you say there is no darkness, it's full of light. When there is no meaning, you create your own meaning, right? Uh, Albert Einstein's quote is very relevant here, where he says, there are two ways to see the world, like either as if everything is miracle or nothing is miraculous, right? Either way liberates you. So it's about, if we have boundaries, it's going to be troublesome. So the fourth part of existential psychotherapy was isolation, right? This is one part which I heavily focus on when I say be selfish, because you are going to do your own work. You're going to do everything by yourself. That's the isolation part. Like, as a, this is the example I think I told you. We two people go to dinner. You can share the journey of going to dinner, but you're going to eat your own food. You're going to digest your own food, right? So when you see this in a whole perspective, when you have the realization of fear of death, and when I say give up, it's with respect to all the mental hindrances we have, right? Not to, like, you don't give up on, like, oh, I'm going to give up on digestion, I'm going to give up on eating. That's not the give up. I'm
Right.
saying you're still responsible, you still are going to live. So for me, it has come to a point of understanding that your awareness, right? So this is a vehicle that needs to sustain the awareness, so I'm going to take
Mm,
care of it. I see it
right.
that way, right?
Right.
Yeah, of course. One person focusing on themselves, if they are gonna ask question about fear of death at a deeper level, after a lot of taking away the initial defense mechanisms, they will be at a point to truly understand, I'm not going to be a burden for someone. I might as well go hungry, go homeless, right? And I'm not saying you're not supposed to live with your friends. Of course, if there are people and they are welcoming, go fun. Jiddu Krishnamurti used to do that, right? Like, he was kind of like the nomad of those times, where he flew to different places. He'll go and give speeches. So they'll ask which hotel you're staying. I'm not staying. I just go and live with this friend, on that street. That's all. And it's amazing. If one person is able to respect that, whatever work I'm doing to myself, I need a certain bit of set and setting, right? For that, money might be involved, but if you're given up all this and if you're a recluse, yeah, money is not needed. There is a way of life, right? There has always been a way of life without money. And you go to that point and you just work. You're working on yourself. You're not I think money becomes a funny thing at some point, because you literally do not, that it's not going to buy you anything that's gonna give you happiness for more than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? And then 10 minutes is an exaggeration, because the peak and the flat is like, so you have to let go of those. That's what I say, give up the desires. With that goes all the material aspects of it, right?
Right.
But it's a way, it's a practice. I think it's a practice that is very slow, every single day, and consistent cycles of sleeping, getting up, and not being frustrated. That's why this is also the preliminary parts of therapy, is learn to forgive yourself, right? When I feel like, when you get to like, I am just focusing on fear of death now. So for me, it feels like forgiving yourself is the first and the only thing again you can do, because the same way you're projecting your own self on the entire world, the world is a mirror,
Right.
right? When you observe characteristics and so on, as we discussed before, you're just projecting yourself. You're doing the same with the other thing as well.
Yeah. I like it. I think it's a beautiful way to see it, and it's hard sometimes to forgive yourself. It's easy to get, I guess if you're not in the present, it becomes even more difficult to forgive yourself because you're living in the past, or you're, like I said, you're worried about repeating the same mistake in the future. And the only way you can forgive yourself is to be present, because then you can't be judgmental, right? So with that goes away the baggage that is self-doubt. Being in the present, all that stuff kind of goes away. But it's fascinating to think about. I don't. Well, let me ask you this. Let me shift gears a little bit here. I know you've got like 15 more minutes, so let me shift gears into this one that I wanted to ask you. Do you see? Okay, I think we have noticed a renaissance in the world of psychedelics, and I think that a lot of people are beginning to live healthier and happier lives because of psychedelics. Maybe that's the group that I run in, or maybe that's an experience that I had, so I'm projecting that on the world. However, I'm curious if you think that it's possible there could be a clampdown on psychedelics in today's world the way there was in the 60s.
Yeah, I think we had the same discussion on Sunday too, right? I was a bit high for that, so maybe I didn't participate fully in that particular part because I was thinking, clamp down, what clamp down? There is nothing you can do. I still get my drugs off the website. What are you
Right.
talking about, right? I'm not thinking from the societal view. I'm still like, yeah, what is he saying? I just ordered something. It's here. What is he saying? Clamp down, not the way it happened back then, right? Like, again, there was this whole thing of drug on war, which is, I don't, even if it happens, right, it might not be because this has spread. The research is happening in multiple places of the world, right? And people are really passionate about it. And we're talking about US, which
Right.
bans abortions, right?
Yeah.
When you compare that, and there are, see, I think I don't understand the difference between the federal and the state laws, but I do understand that Oregon has decriminalized psilocybin, and you see that happening, and people are kind of in a collective mindset. They are shifting their opinion from seeing it as a harsh drug to, yeah, whatever. Maybe they don't understand as much as Nixon did, because Nixon, I think, got the thing. This would break the system as we know it. It's going to break. I'm not gonna let it. I'm gonna be the
Right.
greatest president US has seen. In that way, he is one of those. Like, people, you can't hate him because, yeah, he made the decision. But if you see from his perspective that he wanted to make a decision for system to be upheld, he did a good thing. That's maybe according to his constitutional rights, right? And you have that, and you have Second Amendment of gun laws, right? So these contradicting things that's happening, I think it's what Benjamin said, the genie getting out of the bottle. You can't put
Right.
it back, right? I totally agree with it. It just feels different. Like, I don't know how it was. Maybe it was the same way, Timothy Leary felt, and
Right.
he just went on and said, mix it in the water, right? Like, I truly, if at all someone I could empathize with in this world, I think it's Timothy Leary. Like, and he said this beautiful line where you can't, I've spent years studying psychology. This in 3 hours showed me much of my internal structure, like the psyche that I've got. And it's so true. Like, I've been passionate for reading psychology for 2 3 years, and I found, sorry to say to all the psychologists out there, it was too much concepts and too much labeling. There is a whole lot of framework that's going on. My partner has been to 8 different therapists in the last 5 years, before she had her psychedelic experience. And she said there weren't people who were helping her out of habit patterns. Same with
Yeah.
me. People, my therapist said, give up weed, it's going to be better, that's all. Make yourself more productive. No, now productivity is just nothing but a distraction. It's not, you're not doing it out of present moment awareness. I'm going to do this so that I don't have weed on my brain. How is this a fair game? How is this helping? We're just, therapy is not working at the root of the problem. The truth therapist I was trying to talk about consciousness, he blatantly said, you're 25, you shouldn't be looking into consciousness now. be a good boy for your mom and dad. I'm like, what? Your mom and dad are having tough times going to sleep. Like, what are you saying? Right? And see, I don't think major of the therapist are like this, but having had seen personal experiences like this, and most of the times I feel like they have a model and they try to fit you.
Right.
There are therapies, there are client-based therapies, right? Carl Rogers, I think, was a great guy who wanted to shift from like, I cannot have any structure or the only structure I need is my chair and a good set of ears to listen properly. That's all it's going to be, because the patient is going to do the work. Because for
Right.
our friends are supposed to be our therapist. Like, there doesn't need to be a separate profession as such. If everyone does farming for themselves, there are no farmers. Everyone is the farmer, so therefore using the term farmer is not needed. So if everyone is talking I'm sorry. If everyone is able to talk so open-heartedly, right? Like, if we don't feel like, oh, there are things I'm not going to share, the other person is therapist. As simple as that, because they are just there, non-judgmentally listening to you, what you're saying, and uh, I'm not making fun of anything about what psychology is doing. Again, it's a slow shift, right? But the more I've read and the more psychedelic trips I've done, yeah, this is where I label myself drug addict, but I feel like these have much more potential possibilities. Like, this will put you exactly in the right mindset to
Yeah.
receive all the help you need. You need a guide at that point. That's what the therapist does. And it's amazing the things they have. I'm just, you asked me one more question in the first episode, which said at that point, what do you think of it in the capital or the financial side, right? I do believe right now it's just the sites that are there are very expensive, unnecessarily expensive. So I couldn't imagine myself doing that. It's gonna be a, um, how do you say, psychedelics can't be a sustainable thing initially. You're going to go into a lot of sacrificial helping people, because you need much more. You need these cancer cells to develop to kill the ignorant being and create a conscious being. So in order to do that, we need to do this very much, as much freely as we can, in the sense that it can't be tied to it just can't be tied to money, in my sense. Like, I couldn't imagine myself, because this is medicine's work through me. Like, I say parents are much more than any other person, because of the fact that they kind of make at least made me think like, oh, they created me, kind of sense. But no, God created me through them. So they were a medium and nothing more, and I am a medium to do the work that is always happening. You're just not present to see it. There is always change happening. Contribute to whatever change in a fun way. But all these for me, right, happened mostly with giving up ideas and concepts. That's what I, when I say give up, right, it's to that ideas and concepts as much as you can in your conscious brain. If you're able to do that, life becomes more fun. Like,
That's a
literally.
Yeah, it's a great point because, so often people think of growth as accumulation. The more that I have, the bigger I get. But maybe the real growth is done by getting rid of things. You know what I mean? Like, maybe these things that you hold on to inhibit your growth. And it changes the way it kind of flips your idea of living on its head. All this accumulation slows you down. All this accumulation makes you unable to maneuver through the eye of the needle. Whereas, if you're letting go of stuff, you're becoming nimble. You're more able to, and then it gets back to attachments. Like, you're letting go of attachments versus collecting them. So, Ranga, I love talking to you, man. I feel like the time flies by,
I
and
know.
all of a sudden we have to leave. But
Yeah.
it's really fun, and I'm really thankful to get to talk to you and get to explore some ideas. And I feel like I get to come out of this bad boy with a smile on my face and happier and a little bit more wiser. So thank you for that, my friend.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell me what you got going on, what you're excited about, and where people can find you?
People can find me on LinkedIn.
Nice.
Just for I'm just available for talking. All kinds of
Nice.
conversations are welcome. As I said, it's not anything that I do for money related, right? I just couldn't. So I'd be happy with helping, just sharing the things that I did at that point. Like, as much as it can seem very controversial to go against the tide, it's are you able to hear me? It's okay.
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay. So go against the tide. Like if you are able to have a bit of courage in doing that, you'll realize the tide is not flowing. You're just creating this drama. You're moving and you're assuming the tide is moving and it's being harsh, right? So yeah, whatever I can share on that front. And again, as every episode, the thing will be same only. The podcast, right? So tomorrow, I think we'll definitely sit and we are much more. We just said like just have whatever, just talk,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
the conversations are happening. Like most of the things right now, right? I love it. Just whatever happens with you, I don't know what I'm gonna say the next second. It just flows through me. Same with her, and I just wanna do that, and it's nice. And for one time, I wanna. There are so many things I wanna ask you. Like, and I feel like 90 minutes is less today.
I know it's that's good conversation when you could sit down and you just talk, and next thing you know, it's you don't even experience time the way it's almost like being in a trip. You know what I mean? Like time will
Yeah,
fly right by.
yeah.
So
It's amazing.
it
Yeah,
is. It's awesome, man. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I
yeah,
look forward to talking to you soon, my friend. And
definitely.
thank you for spending time with us, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you. Bye.
Okay. Aloha.